Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Property Doctor podcast with me, your host, Dr. Andrew Threadgold. It's been a minute, as they say in Los Angeles, since we last did a YouTube episode. That's probably because it's been a few weeks since I actually released any podcast material. But this is the trouble, shall we say, when you've got so many things that you're trying to do. And I'm not a full-time content creator, in inverted commas. I'm just a regular fella trying to grind out a living and make something of myself. So unfortunately, this type of stuff that takes so much time is really difficult to fit in. But I'm going to try and get a bit more regularity with these. Anyway, this episode is with Keith Firmin, who's an ex-copper with the Met. We've got a great story to tell. He's got some great ideas around mindset and prosperity and abundance and all the stuff that I'm into. It's not particularly woo, but it's a bit woolly if you're not if you haven't been awakened to the mindset of abundance, shall we say. And he puts a lot of effort in. He's a good bloke, is Keith, and I hope he comes across really well. He's got a fantastic beard. It's a funny beard. It's grey on the edge, but black closer to the face. And I don't know if he puts highlights in it or something, but it's you'd think if it was just grey, it'd be grey all the way. So why is the edge grey and I don't know. Anyway, maybe you can answer that, and maybe you can put it in the comments below. So I'm going to try and do a bit more on YouTube. There should be fortnightly podcast episodes from season 2, full length ones, but then in the middle, in the kind of weeks in between, I'm going to try, I can't promise, but I'm going to try and put either videos that were made last season of those interviews, or I might try and put some different content in there, something a bit more interesting, and try and develop the channel a little bit. But as I say, I'm not a YouTuber. This is all new to me, and I'm just trying my best. So hope you enjoy it. Hope you get some value from it. If you do, or even if you watch this and you just fancy giving an underdog a bit of a go, comment, subscribe, whatever it is, share, whatever they do, and I'll be very grateful. Anyway, over to me interviewing Keith and talking about all things property, mindset and grind. Not that kind of grind. Anyway, all the best. Thank you very much, and we'll see you next time.
Hi, and welcome to this week's episode of the Property Doctor podcast with me, your host, Dr. Andrew Threadgold. This week, following a little break from podcasting for a few weeks, I've got a pal of mine, Keith Firmin, on, who's a fellow property person he covers kind of Greater Manchester, the Chester area. He's done good things in property in his career so far and has forged a life for himself where he can work from home and kind of does what he pleases now, which is something that I'd like to talk to him about as we move on. But Keith also has a very interesting Instagram page with all sorts of humorous memes that come on every week, and I strongly recommend that anybody follows him if you like interesting social media content. But before we do anything, how are you doing, Keith?
I'm good, thank you. I'm starting to reconsider whether I need to cut back on the memes because I'm worried when I go places. So I've been to networking events and people have come up to me and said, "Oh, you do the memes."
Yeah.
Nothing about property anymore. It's never property. It's always memes. I don't know if I want that to be my brand. I don't know anymore, so I need to reconsider that. But thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, well, I think it's being known for something is a good thing. So whatever it is, use it.
That's very, very true. I'm now starting to try and scrape people's minds for their own images and their own videos that they want to send me that I can make into a meme just to make my life easier. I'm not going to lie.
Well, I was going to come on to the memes in a bit, but since we're on it, do you do them all yourself, or do you have a VA somewhere that does them for you?
No, I do it all myself. I've said to people for the longest, like I think everybody's got particular sets of skills, haven't they? And a lot of
Sound
people's
like
skills
Liam
are very,
Neeson.
yeah. Mine are less useful than his. He can find people. I can't. I can find images and create memes really quickly. That's all it is. I remember somebody that I coached before said, "How do you actually go about doing it?" So I sent them like a minute and 15-second video of me creating one, like just getting it from the internet and sticking it into Canva, creating a quick quote, and then posting it. And it doesn't take me long.
Really?
But as a result of that, I think I probably abuse it too much because then I maybe spend too much time doing it. But I enjoy it, and it's like you say, it's better to be known for something than nothing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's Sunday, isn't it? Meme day is Sunday.
Yes, it's stuck in your head. Yes,
yeah, absolutely. And so I love swiping because you do. It must be like 4 or 5 on a Sunday that you flick through. It's brilliant.
every time, and I'll just collate them during the week. And then sometimes I will be watching something on Twitter, and Kim, my wife, will say to me, "Are you doing stuff for memes?" I'm like, "Yeah, that's exactly what I'm doing." It's a great get out as well. If I spend an extra 5 minutes just scrolling online, oh, it's for memes, it's for meme research, as if wasting my time. Why are we not buying any houses? Because I'm doing memes. What's more important? I'm putting food on the table. It's memes. No, I don't know. I don't know. I'm sure there'll be a downfall somewhere. I'm sure somebody who actually creates the memes originally, and I've just stolen their image, will come to me one day and go, "Stop doing this to your 4,000 followers. It's pathetic." It's like,
Wow, is that how many followers you've got?
it's more than this 8,000.
Is it
But
really? Wow.
I would imagine my mum's got a number of different fake accounts. I'm confident on that one. She says she's never online, but she always knows what I'm doing. It's weird.
Yeah. That's fascinating. I mean, that's amazing, really, because property people don't typically have massive followers, do they?
No, and it's been built up over. I think lockdown helped out massively, right? Because people didn't really have anything else to do, which is a shame. But also, it meant that all eyes would be on their phones the majority of the time, and that's where I saw a big spike in what I was doing because I was putting out regular content, not memes at that stage. There's a lot of stats, a lot of data, a lot of kind of reassurance around what the market was doing based on what I was seeing, and doing giveaways of coaching and stuff like that. And I think that helps keep people sane to a degree, not to kind of pat myself on the back, but I did see it had a positive impact. And then as a result of that, I noticed my followers went up quite a bit as well. And that's just kind of stayed quite level. It's nowhere near where I want it to be, but then I don't spend enough time on it. Despite the memes, I don't spend enough time on it to grow it further.
Right.
Which is my own fault.
Yeah, fascinating. And do you, because, anybody that's got anywhere in property uses other people's money and raises private money. Do you find that it helps for that?
Yeah, it's been mega, and it's social media has brought me everything that I want in property. So when I've put stuff out in relation to funding, we've raised funding for it, and it's been amazing. In fact, we went on a funding cycle and we're about to hit another one fairly recently, and all funds that we wanted to raise were raised exclusively through social media.
Wow.
It's exactly where they were from, and yet those have bled through into real life. Of course, you meet people online and then you meet them in person.
Yeah.
There's been that crossover in some instances, but not all of them. And it's been really, really beneficial. Same as finding deals. We did a cottage conversion flip. So buying one house, converting it back into 2 cottages, which it was originally, and then selling them both individually. We bought that off of a sourcer, their very first source deal, and they came from social media. And we bought something else from them since.
Right.
So
wow.
Coaching clients, same thing. They see you online, they need to see you being present. And that's where it's come from. And it's, I mean, the benefits of social media. I don't need to tell you. You do an amazing job with it, so you more than most know how it operates. But it's definitely brought us what we want for sure.
Yeah, I think it's what always gets me is that the stuff when you get inquiry about an investor or whatever it might be, it's often people that you've no idea have been watching you. And a lot of the time, it's people that aren't even following you, but they are stalking you. Do you know what I mean?
I reflect on my own usage, and I'm like, oh yeah, I don't follow so many people, but I still make a point of looking at their account. Not even in property. I follow where I just keep up to date with them. And I do wonder sometimes if I reached out to them, they would see that I don't follow them, but that I'm still following. It's really, really weird. Out of a platform, what's your preferred platform for social media?
Oh, Instagram all day.
Really? Why is this?
Because I like pictures. I'm a simple man.
It's fair. It's fair. It's quick in there. So quick.
Yeah. I don't do Twitter. I think when I've looked at Twitter, it's a toxic place. The hate that's on there for everybody. I can't do Twitter. LinkedIn's a different kind of ball game. I don't mind LinkedIn, but I use it for the business stuff that I do. Facebook, but Instagram because it's a predominantly picture-based platform, seems to work for me. And it's more intuitive than the others for me as well.
Yeah, I think that's quite fair. Have you achieved things through businesses and property through social media as well to a specific platform, or has it kind of been across the board? You've raised bits and you've found different deals through different platforms?
It's mainly, we found deals, found investors, found opportunities, mainly through Instagram or Facebook, actually. I've got, like I say, the business acquisition stuff, I mainly concentrate on LinkedIn, and I've had people come to me with opportunities for that stuff through LinkedIn because it's a more business platform. But for the property, money raising, it's mainly Instagram. And I try and tailor the content slightly.
Yeah, which is smart, right? I wonder if I spent more time on LinkedIn and you spent more time on LinkedIn, whether we achieve the same things through LinkedIn, or whether LinkedIn as a platform in general isn't quite as sharing and open, and you wouldn't have the right client base. I've done bits of business through LinkedIn. I just cannot stand the platform. It's not my bag whatsoever. And the number one rule I've had in the last year is I need to enjoy what I'm doing. And I don't enjoy LinkedIn, so I'm not going to spend much time on there whatsoever. And I get where you're coming from on the TikTok, on the Twitter front. Do you use TikTok?
Well, I have an account.
Oh, fine, of course.
Yeah, everybody scrolls TikTok.
Nothing productive. I don't do any business on it. I literally just scroll for hours. It's fine.
Yeah, I loved TikTok in lockdown.
It was amazing, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was brilliant. I thought I'd found something like amazing, but
yeah.
I've tried, and Threads as well. Like I've done 3 posts on Threads, and it's just not me. I think maybe, as Gary V would say, just need to jump on stuff and get good at it. But it's effort, and I've got effort expended in other areas of my life. But maybe I should concentrate more on social media.
There's the guilt, isn't there? I should. We could all do it.
Enough. We're not doing enough, are we? None of us are doing enough.
My core rule now, and it didn't always used to be this, my core rule now is when I get to over 100, am I going to look back and think, oh, I wish I'd spent another 4 days on LinkedIn or TikTok? Definitely not. Yeah. I definitely won't. That won't be coming out my mouth. Not even on Instagram, none of that. So I'm content with my usage. Twitter is very toxic, but also I slightly enjoy seeing what the sentiment of the masses is. TikTok, I actually deleted it because I was spending too much time on there.
Really?
Meme research, obviously, but I was spending too much. Yeah, I was spending too much time. I deleted it. I don't miss it either. Do not miss it.
Yeah, at jiggling bits and bums, that kind of meme research.
I don't know what you're talking about, Andrew. That's not. I'm looking for science and research. I don't know what you mean. Don't see my liked posts either. That's not going to help.
No. Hey.
Jesus.
So tell us a bit about yourself, Keith. So, where you're from, where did you grow up, what did you do before you found property?
So I originally came from down south in Hertfordshire, and I won't name places because it probably won't mean much to many people because many people don't know where I was actually from. But I lived in a small town, grew up there, had no aspirations to do anything remarkable in my life. I still don't think I'm doing anything remarkable, just to be clear on that. But I was quite happy to get a job, stay in a job, change job, go traveling for a bit. So I went to Uganda and Thailand, did some volunteering in both countries. That was amazing, and life kind of changing and eye-opening for a lot of different reasons. I went to Thailand a year after they had the tsunami, so it was basically a massive clear-up operation. And weirdly, I was assigned to a site where we were building kitchens for people. So I am a trade. So if anybody wants a builder that can't build or can't lay brick properly, come give me a shout because I can't help with it. So we did that for about 7 months, and it was amazing. Honestly, the best experience of my life. I don't know if it was just a moment in time, but we would go to site, we'd get there, it felt like 8 a.m. in the morning, we'd work all the way through until like 4 or 5. So just a regular shift over here, but over there, when you're meant to kind of be on holiday, but not really, you don't really know what's expected. But we'd work long hours-ish, and then we'd go out in the evening, we'd just drink. And we'd do that every single night. And we lived in this really small town at the time called, I Khao which is on the west coast, I think it is, and it was still not for tourists at that point particularly. It was still very much they were recovering, and there were a few things open, a few bars started to open, so we got to then populate them and help them grow by buying all of their alcohol and drinking excessively. And then the next morning we'd go back to site and we'd do the same thing again, and we'd come back. And the craziest thing, now that you look back at it, and I'm sure everybody's got these moments where you look back at something, the guy who was running our team, an amazing human called Andy, he didn't have an English driving license, so he definitely didn't have a Thai driving license. He would be drinking as much as us, and he would pick us up in the morning in his like pickup truck and drive us for like 20 minutes to get to site every day. And I look back now and I think, I'm really lucky that I'm not dead, because I know he'd been drinking, so I don't know whether there was any faith in the fact that he'd get us there, but that was phenomenal. Did that for, like I say, 6 months, then went to Uganda for 3 months a couple of years later. Worked a bunch of just routine jobs. I worked at Hotel Chocolat in the call center in the first place set up. That was amazing. And the best thing about that was we got free Easter eggs at Easter when there was extra stock. The best chocolate in the world.
Yep.
And then worked at BT, just a bunch of, like I say, really routine jobs. And then it got to the point where I needed to kind of be a bit more sensible, make a concerted decision around what I was doing. So I applied to be a firefighter, and I failed their test miserably. I was the first one that was ruled out. I couldn't do it. Like physically, I hadn't trained for it because I didn't know what the training would be because it's role specific. And I just messed it up. So I thought, what am I going to do now? Go be a police officer? So I went to be a police officer instead. So I trained for that, got into the police in London, worked there for 9 years, could see that having a negative impact on me. And then eventually I had a really easy route into property. My wife was already doing it, and we'd come back. It was one of those things, we were coming back from our honeymoon in 2016. And I said to her, I just do not want to go back to work. Like, this is not what I want. And I tried a few other things. I'd done some basketball media in the UK and attended NBA events in the UK. And then I'd gone over to America and done a little bit of NBA media. I'd done a little bit of selling on Amazon, digital marketing. I'd really kind of tested things out to see what I could do that wasn't the police. And I was running them alongside the police. So I knew I had the capacity to do both.
Yeah.
And then my wife, Kim, said at the time, why don't you just join us in property? Because you're already kind of doing it. Like, you're coming on viewings on the weekend, you're putting in offers, and just do that. So for the next 14 months, from I think it was like November 2016 up until the end of 2017, I dedicated almost all my entire free time to property, to the point where we could have grown our portfolio enough that I could then leave my job.
Wow.
And here I am.
Wow.
I wouldn't, just to be clear, I wouldn't recommend burning yourself out to achieve something, but for me it worked, so I wouldn't take it back.
Yeah, amazing. Do you mind me asking a little bit about the old Bill? What did you do? What did you do in the police? What was your job?
I managed.
Tell me it was Vice.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't. I spent some time working in local neighbourhoods because when I joined, they'd rotate you around. So you do a stint. I think it was like 6 months in the Safer Neighbourhoods team, working within those neighbourhoods. Then you do kind of another 6 months, I think it was, on response calls, so 999 calls, driving around, answering everything. That was really interesting. And then you were meant to do a stint within CID. So you really get an idea of everything. So you know where you can go, where your skill sets are. They changed it halfway through and said, you're not going to go to CID. But then what I did is I transferred to the warrants team. So we were then going out specifically looking for people who were wanted, which was amazing. One of the best jobs I've ever done. And then after that, I transferred willingly, I'll have you know, to managing sex offenders.
Really?
I don't know how much you want to get into that. I probably wouldn't arguably get into that whatsoever, but that was very eye-opening. It was incredible to be a part of. You learn a ton of really good stuff, fascinating kind of psychology of people, but ultimately it was devastating for me. And like that ultimately led to me think, I don't want to go back. Even though I'd chosen that, I have no regrets over it. I could see it was having a negative impact. So I was like, okay, this is probably enough now. Let's move. So I think I spent 3 years within that department, and I felt like it made a difference. I made a difference in any capacity that anybody could do in that department. But like I said, I think I'd probably seen out my time there and said, no, it's time to go.
Yeah, wow, that's fascinating, and I can totally understand that. I mean, you know, I'm not going to get into it, but in my job in medicine, we come across people that have offences, similar things, and you know, even when I've worked in hospitals, people come in cuffs with the coppers from the prisons, and they I don't know if they should, but they often tell you what the prisoner is in prison for, and it gives you a preconceived idea of what that person is or what that person's like, and that in itself is uncomfortable. So there's a lot of stress that goes around the edges when dealing with people that people don't kind of acknowledge, because if you're stressed out because you think something of somebody and you've never even met them, then that's just your mind. Do you know what I mean? That's not based on any reality. And then you've got the stress of the job as well that comes, and all the rest of it that you must have experienced. So it's not surprising that, and we spoke before we came on about, I'm a big believer that you've got to get to a point where it's so painful to stay where you are in order to give you the motivation to make the change. And that certainly happened to me in medicine, and it sounds like, well, from what you've said, I could understand if that was what happened to you in the police, because something's got to get you up, and 14 months of slog, surely to God. So there must have been something pushing you.
Definitely, yeah, I completely agree. It's either desperation or inspiration, isn't it? And for me, I'm quite happily motivated by desperation, back to the wall. I know that I can't go any worse than that, so I need to then push forward. So I completely understand that, like you say, with your experience and why you're now looking at different routes and have looked at different routes for a while, it's the desperation thing. And it doesn't work for everybody because it can burn you out and it can be almost a negative factor. But for me, it was very clear in my mind, I need to leave. And every step that I would take forward, yes, it would be. So realistically, my schedule, and I cannot, and I promise you, I cannot remember now whether this is me misremembering to kind of hype myself up, or whether this is actually what it was. In my mind, this is exactly how it was. I'd wake up in the morning, 5:30, let's say. I would do maybe half an hour's worth of work on the way into work, or up to an hour, because my journey time would be over an hour. I'd go to work. Any lunch break that I'd get, I'd be calling agents to book viewings or offers. Lunch breaks didn't happen often, so it didn't really happen. On the way home, I'd do work, and in the evening, I'd do work. And then Saturday, we'd be viewing. Friday evening, we'd be viewing potentially if I'd taken a day off. Saturday viewing. Sunday, maybe analysing deals and putting offers out for the Monday, and then go through that cycle again. And that's basically what it was for the 14 months. But I don't, like I say, I don't regret any of that, as I'm sure you don't regret the efforts you're putting in now alongside a job, because you need to do something. Otherwise, how's it going to change? It just doesn't change. No one's going to hand it to you, is the reality of it. No one's going to go, come on, Andrew, come into my circle, come on, you'll be fine. You can leave your job, we'll get you sorted. No, you've got to look out for yourself and look after yourself. And I truly believe the growth that you have during that really hard period, and it was hard, helps give you calluses for later on, because you know what you've achieved before and what you achieved as a result of that, like of the effort. So if you did that again, why wouldn't you achieve the same again? Because you know you can do it. You've already built up the muscles, the reps. And so I take a lot of confidence in that, and it's kind of built my foundation going forward.
Yeah. So what were you concentrating on in that first 14 months? Because what your goal presumably was to replace your income.
Yeah, and we were fortunate. Again, I was fortunate, sorry, I should say. My wife had been investing for a while and had built up enough of a portfolio for her to be able to downsize her job or leave her job, essentially. She was working in London in retail, making some good money, and then had her own challenges, so then left that and was supported by property income to then work in a lesser paid job, but in a property specific role. So she worked for an estate agent. Right. Me, it was how can I get as many properties as possible and fund them at the same time in order for me to then leave my job. So it was replacement of income, and hand on heart, it certainly wasn't all my effort. It wasn't our collective effort. We were working with sourcing agents at the time, but we still needed to go up and put out offers because we might get them accepted as well. So we weren't going to say no to deals. We were going to say yes to everything, but we didn't know where they were coming from. So we had to put in that effort. So for me, it was viewings, offers, buy-to-lets, raise the money, buy a house, then renovate it, site visits, all of that stuff. And that's what it was in the 14 months. It was just the core elements of what we should be doing, right? Raising money, if you choose to raise money to buy deals, and buying the deals, and then seeing them through to whether it's an exit of a sale or an exit of a rental and a refinance. That's what it was, 14 months.
Mm. And was it predominantly buy-to-lets, or was it HMOs, or?
It was all buy-to-lets. Arguably, that was a mistake, if I'm
Right.
completely honest, because there wasn't enough capital strategies at the time. So yes, 10 years ago, deals were going to be better ROIs, return on the money that's been put into them, going to be more available than they are certainly now. But still, we were leaving money in deals. So we needed a capital strategy to be able to repay that. And while my wages could do that to a degree, and refinancing it can certainly do it, we were still not focusing enough on diversity of strategy. But we looked predominantly at buy-to-lets, to the point where I would go into a house and just be single-minded and only see it as a buy-to-let,
Right.
which again, hindsight tells you, oh, actually, you could have looked at it for about 4 different strategies, but we didn't. We looked at it for this one thing, and it worked for those things. Realistically, I just think I'd do things a little bit differently now.
Mm.
But I imagine everybody would. You've got the experience, you've got the knowledge. Now you look back and think, oh, I could have done that instead, or I could have taken that risk, or that didn't work for me, so I shouldn't have bought it. I think we all probably look back and analyze things differently now because we're more experienced.
Yeah, well, that's the definition of intelligence, isn't it? Is, if you do something and then you do it again, but you don't change your behavior, then you've not learned anything,
Yeah.
So,
yeah, completely.
and I absolutely agree, which is, I mean, my first goal was to replace my income. We started off because I believe everybody should start with a buy-to-let, and that unlocks, funding things in the future, because, if you've not got any buy-to-lets and you try and get a service accommodation mortgage, they'll want to see a 12-month history of being a landlord, so everybody needs a buy-to-let. Certainly in my experience, it's difficult that you reduce the pool of options if you've not got any buy-to-let experience. So I tell everybody that, unfortunately, as unsexy as it appears at the moment, you really do need to try and get a buy-to-let if you've done nothing in property. But I quickly realised I didn't want to be a landlord. So, and you'd need a lot of buy-to-lets to replace my income. So we concentrated predominantly on service accommodation. But now we're at a point where the market's changing a bit, interest rates and all the rest of it. And I picked up 2 properties this weekend, just gone. The shells, the properties are just empty, completely back to brick already. And I'm thinking, something like a leased HMO, like a Serco HMO type thing, because I don't want to be a landlord, but that's not being a landlord. They're just you're leasing it to someone else to do it, aren't you?
So that's really interesting. So I'd been very resolute in my opinion early on in property of, I don't want to ever have an HMO. And a lot of that was based on a fair amount of the work that I would do in my previous career would be going into HMOs or HMO type environments. And I could never understand how multiple personalities under one roof could coexist with no issues. I just couldn't see it possible. So I was completely against it. And then it got to the point where, and this was 2, maybe 3 years ago, I think about 2, where we'd started to look at HMOs, but not in a way of being a private landlord, exactly the way that you've described. Can we provide it to somebody on a lease? Yes, getting a lesser rent potentially. Yes, interest rates will be higher on a mortgage, but it's hands-free. There's no maintenance, there's no management. And so it kind of evens out. And that's what we're now focused heavily on, is buying properties, either existing HMOs to then just tidy them up and hand them over, or a buy-to-let style of house, convert it to an HMO and provide it to a social housing provider for 5 to 7 years. And that's worked really well so far. Again, I'm experienced enough now to go into a property and look at multiple strategies rather than just this has to work for this. But equally, I'm very clear on what works as a social HMO. And so I can kind of tailor what I'm looking to and do my due diligence around that as a first port of call. And it's worked brilliantly. So I'm the same as you. Do you mind me asking why you didn't want to be a landlord?
There's a lot of reasons, actually. It was, being phoned up saying, I want to change my toilet seat. Am I allowed? There was the rights that the government are giving, taking away from landlords, shall we say. There was the potential for damage and the eviction process, and and the lack of income. Ultimately, I mean, if there was one main thing, it was the fact that 200 quid or 300 quid per month profit on a property that you've spent 20 grand tickling up doesn't do it for me, even if you get most of your money back out. And you need a lot of those to replace your income. So that was the main reason. But then when you add in the chew of managing the people and the risk and all the rest of it for that 200 quid a month, it didn't make sense. Whereas service accommodation, I love it because if they don't get out, I change the codes on the lock remotely, and then I get the old bill to come and kick them out if needs be. Not that I've ever needed to do that, but that's there's no fannying about, is there? Do you know what I mean?
No. That's a very quick resolution. Do you know what you've just done though? You've suggested that people should get into buy-to-lets first, and now you've just said buy-to-lets are definitely not worth the time, energy, or effort. But realistically, I'm
a walking contradiction.
But you're right though. In both instances, I completely agree as well. I think on a buy-to-let front, if you're getting involved in property, you want the minimum amount of risk per asset, don't you? Especially if you've got no knowledge whatsoever.
Yeah.
You want to be able to buy something. If any issues arise, they're contained within a smaller asset, so it's not capital rich, and you can resolve it at limited cost. So that when you do get a bigger problem, i.e. an HMO, you've already got the calluses from all these buy-to-lets building up, so you know now how to deal with stuff in volume. That's part of it, without even the financial side of it. Equally, I'm aware as you are, like for £200 a month, it doesn't sound like it's worth it by any stretch of the imagination. I guess my kind of pushback on that would be it's the longer term play of if you're able and in a position and patient enough to park a bunch of buy-to-lets on the side, just let them tick over. Don't worry about the cash flow. Just know they're there, and provided you've bought in a decent enough area, they will go up in value because we've all seen it. Just leave them there and then start to diversify. I would always, same as you, I'd always recommend doing buy-to-lets. I think people maybe need to get comfortable with realizing they are the least sexy of anything you could ever do in your life, anything at all, not even within property, anything. They are just dull, but they work.
Yeah, and I think what the wider point I was making is it depends on what your goal is. My goal was replace my income as quickly as possible, and unless you're buying volume of buy-to-lets, it's very difficult to do that. But once you've got to a different point in your career, you then might start thinking, well, I'll try expanding my asset base. So, and buy-to-lets are great for that, because if you've got numerous buy-to-lets and the market rises 10%, then you get 10% across all of them, not just one or two HMOs, which you might have got. So it depends where you're at in your career, in your path. And it depends what your goal is. I'm a big believer in set the goal, and then the path emerges on how to get there. And that's where I come from.
So do you think that it will just come to you, or do you think that you then tune into where the right way is to go?
I set a goal, and then I think around breaking it down into steps and the different ways to get there. And then I just carry on with my life. And it's an amazing thing that without really putting too much emphasis on every day going out searching for this specific step in my goal, things start appearing. Maybe it's because you've opened your subconscious up to look for them. Whereas if you hadn't set the goal and broken it down, you wouldn't.
Yeah.
But I think, so it's like the whole business acquisition thing. I set a goal to look into it, and, only a few months later, I've got several plates spinning in that arena. So it just, things arrive if you look for them, or if you open your mind, I think.
Completely. And to go back and tie in the social media aspect of that, that's why it's so important to put stuff on social media, right? Because if you've just got your goal and you keep it to yourself, yeah, you can still get to your end target, but it's going to be harder. Whereas if you're posting what you're doing and what you're looking for, all it takes is one person to see it and go, oh, actually, my cousin is going to be selling a business. This might be of relevance to you. And that, I think that's the beauty of social media. Number one, it's free, which I think people regularly forget. Like, we can't complain about it. It is free. But equally, we've just got to be consistent with it. Just the consistency of posting on there, you can then get very easily to your goal, because there's going to be enough people out there who know what you want and will remember you. Even if you have to incentivize them, they'll remember you.
Yeah, I agree. It's social media is a very powerful thing if you engage with it, and you've got to be consistent, don't you think?
Yeah, completely. But you've done a really good job on social media and of having websites as well, right? Whereas I personally have never been that bothered by a website. I've always, for the longest, I felt they're quite outdated. This is not against you by any stretch, because we were actually going to have another website, but I felt like people's main port of call will be social media. That's how they tend to find you. I've noticed there's a demographic for us who will go to a website first and will look for kind of more, I don't know, more staged forms of communication. So websites, newspaper articles, anything in the media, that's where they look as kind of credibility. But the majority of our audience will look online on social media for us. The consistency of it is essential, because if people can check, it's a CV, isn't it? That's all it is. It's a CV. And as long as it's accurately representing who you are, the personality thing I think is key. If we go back to the meme thing for a second, that's personality. It shows who you are and helps you stand out if that's who you are. Equally, and I've said this to people so many times, I find social media, Instagram for property, really boring. Really boring. People's stuff is so dull. I cannot emphasize enough how bored I am of it. It's all the same stuff.
Yeah.
There's nothing that makes anybody stand out. Nothing. It's just, here's a house, here's another house, here's me with some keys. And I'm very proud of them. I'm not being a dick about it deliberately, although I appreciate I'm sounding like it. It's great that people are doing stuff, but equally, where's the flavour in it? Where's the colour? Where's anything? It's boring.
Yeah.
I hate
agree.
it.
Yeah.
It's Andrew, I hate it.
Yes. Me too. And,
yes.
and kids with keys in front of rented Lamborghinis, that gets on my tit ends as well.
It's a sign of status, isn't it? I've got some keys. Good.
Yeah.
Go and do some more.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we have digital locks on all our properties. We don't have keys anymore.
That's why you hate it. You need to start doing that, taking pictures of your digital locks instead.
Yeah.
See how many people contact you. What is this, Andrew? I don't get it. Don't worry about it. When you get to my level, you'll understand. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, I think the website thing is interesting. It was actually a coach, because I have a coach, property and business, and it was my coach that said, when people search you, if people are going to like invest any money with you, they're going to search for you. So you need to have a sort of presence across the internet, and you need different aspects of that filling in. So your footprint needs to be social media, YouTube if you've got YouTube, podcasting if you've got podcasting, and a website. And the number of people that come through the website is unbelievable, actually. I don't know where they start. They might start on Instagram, click the link through to the website, look through the website, and then fill in the contact form. I'm sure that's how it works. But we get significant leads through the website. So yeah, I'm a big believer that, and you've got to have a good website. I think we paid for a good website. One of my pals did the website for B&Q, which the B&Q website is shit. But my pal that did it, he does our website.
So just to confirm, your website says the person who made your website did a really shit job on the website he was meant to be doing, which was B&Q.
Yeah, for Kingfisher. Yeah. So I mean, you know, when you go on the B&Q website or Screwfix or somewhere, and you put in, I don't know, an electric drill, and then it suggests things for you. You know, you might need these drill bits or these roll clubs. Well, when he first was developing it, if you clicked on a shovel, it would give you gaffer tape, a balaclava, cable ties.
Google Maps locations to where to bury them. Excellent. Yeah. That's amazing. I think you need to ask some questions about your mate, really. I think you need to ask some questions about his background.
Yeah, well, yeah. I think he's got a funny look in his eye. Let's put it like that.
So do you mind me asking, on your website then, the inquiries that you get through it, which pot do they fall into? Is it selling businesses? Is it funding? Is it deals? Is it coaching clients, or is it something else?
It's well, the website I'm talking about is a property website.
Yeah.
I've got a business acquisition website going live in the next 2 weeks as well, but that's a separate. He's doing that one as well. So it's mainly people that come either wanting to sell us property or wanting to invest.
Okay, cool. Interesting. That's really interesting. That's a good takeaway. Because we've had inquiries before from a certain demographic looking for funding opportunities or having sourced deals. But there's been a disconnect between their expectation and the reality of the market. And so for us at the time, we weren't able to come to anything where we could work together on something. But actually, while we are looking at making another website, it's interesting to know where yours are leading to or what they're inquiring about, because that might be something that we can focus more on our website. Interesting. I think all of it is interesting because it's always going to hit a demographic, right? You're going to have your own particular group of people who are looking at you. I'm going to have people that will look at me, and there'll be two very separate groups, but equally there'll be some crossover, which is amazing. And then that comes down to, well, who they're going to relate to more, what's the best opportunity for them. But I think people often forget that we've all got our own groups that look at us. You might have a very particular demographic of people who are within the medical industry. I know it's a very broad thing to be talking about, but it could be people who are within that background who think, actually, there's some relatability. I'll go to you. Equally, I can have people from maybe a policing background who would look at me and think, well, he's done it, so how has he done it? Can I go to him? And I think people forget that all the time. I think people think that we just have this one big pool of people that we're all trying to speak to, and it's just not the reality. There's so many, like you said, the followers that I've got on Instagram, I would be willing to bet a lot of them don't follow you, and vice versa. A lot of your followers wouldn't follow me. Hopefully, after this, we'll have mutual followers. But I think there's so many people out there to appeal to, and we just have to kind of go all in on the people that are right for us. And your website is obviously doing that. You're hitting a market with that, which I think is fantastic. Have you tweaked it over time to try and gauge whether you can get different responses, or are you quite happy with the way things are?
Well, Mark, the guy that does it, he does all the SEO and he's always on it. So, and we've got a few websites, one for the holiday lets as well, and that's we never used to get any direct bookings through it, never. But now, over the last kind of month, he's done something with it, and people are searching for places to stay in Redcar, which is where we've got quite a lot of stuff, and it's coming up. Like, he's tweaked the SEO, so now we're getting actual people coming from that rather than through Airbnb. So there's definitely I don't pretend to understand it. It's witchcraft. I just don't get it. I have no idea how he does it, but it's working. So I'm sure it could be better. I don't know. I don't know enough about it, but I'm happy at the minute.
And that ties into something that you and I both know, working for ourselves within property or within finding businesses, is it's about outsourcing to the people who know stuff best. You could have spent 12 hours trying to learn it and being frustrated. Yeah, you might have a different skill set, but does it really matter? Or could you just pay somebody to do it much quicker, who's better at it than you, and you can just carry on doing what you're best at?
Yeah.
And I think I struggled with that for ages, truthfully. I struggled with outsourcing, giving up any kind of control for the longest. And now I work with a VA who's amazing at doing all the research for me, which I enjoy. I love doing research, but she does it all now, and it's phenomenal. It allows me to focus on viewing, offers, meetings, all the stuff I should be doing that she can't because she's remote. So there's definitely something to that, paying people to do the best job possible.
Yeah. We both know Danny Inman, and the amount he posts on social media, I wonder if he's got a VA that does it for him.
No, he does it himself.
Like three times a day, at least sometimes.
His phone's always in his hand. It's basically, he's going to be the evolution of people, because people's hands. There'll be two types of people. There'll be people who've just got a beer can in their hand or a pint glass, and there'll be people that have got a phone in their hand. It'll be one of those two things.
Yeah, it's impressive.
Yeah, it is, and it's obviously worked, doesn't it? It goes back to what we said. If you're intentional about what you're doing, you will get what you want at the end of it. So if you're thinking about, I want something, and you're taking small actions towards it, posting on social media, people will see it and people will come to you eventually. They've got no choice. They'll just be blooded to death with amount of posts that you put out.
Yeah,
it works.
You sound like you've. I mean, your mindset's great. Have you always been like this, or have you had a personal growth journey over the years?
Mindset of what? Sorry.
Just in general. I mean, it's a cliche, but the mindset of abundance rather than scarcity, and attracting opportunities.
No, definitely that's been a change. I think in my old career, you couldn't help but be negative about stuff all of the time. Um, and that's a real challenge in itself, and that's not healthy. So there had to be a change somewhere. I think it's just been, I don't really have any kind of set rules on life in general. There are certain things that I kind of believe and I'm quite happy to change. Like I'm quite happy to change my apparently fixed mindset on stuff if I've got new information. I guess my kind of mindset at the moment, and has been for a number of months, is none of it is that important. Like there will be enough for everybody. We can all eat. Like I see a lot of houses, you see a lot of houses. We're not going to be seeing the same houses, so let's not cry about it.
Yeah.
Equally, if somebody's investing in the same area, yes, we're going to be competing for some of the same houses, but equally, we can probably help each other. We can share knowledge. None of it is that important. I don't think anything is worth stressing over that much that it's going to cause any kind of harm. I think life is way more important than any of that stuff, which is maybe more deep than you were hoping that I would go into it. But that's genuinely how I view it. Like none of it should be that important. There's many more things important than getting an offer rejected or seeing somebody up in your area buying houses that you wanted to buy. We don't have any right over any of it. It's not ours.
No, I agree. Yeah. And what about the psychology of raising money? Presumably, if you were buying houses with reasonable volume to leave your job, you don't have an endless pot of money. You must have been raising money.
Yeah, been doing that since day one, raising funds, which blew my mind because I didn't think that in the beginning people would ever. Why would people lend you money? People don't have money. Why would they lend it to me? Or my thought process in the beginning was, why would they give it to me? And I cannot stress enough to people that it is a mindset thing. And I know that's very vague. I know that's very cliche as well, but it is a mindset thing. You have to understand it. And even if we take it back to the practical sense, like when you speak to people on a raising finance level, they want to know set things. They need to see set things. So they need to know, what do you want? Like how much money do you need? Not just I'm looking to raise money. No, how much do you want? Because then that rules me in or out. How long do you need it for? I need to know when my money's coming back. What security can you offer me? And what am I going to get in return for the risk that I'm taking? Those are the kind of four practical elements, but it is very much about just knowing that everybody has money. Just because we've never grown up speaking about it doesn't mean it's not true. It is about talking about what you do and finding out from there who is more open to those conversations and who is inviting conversations with you. So I've raised money, Kim, my wife, has raised money, and we've raised money within our business to buy assets. And it's come from kind of three circles away from us. So people that we know immediately, friends and family type of thing. Then it might be people that we work with. And then outside of that, it might be referrals to us, which has become more of a common thing. And that's where it's all come from. And I love working with other people on their fund, because from a selfish standpoint, we obviously get to grow our business, but from an unselfish standpoint, I'm getting to work with somebody whose money is going to be growing, and then when they get it back, they can do what they want with it, or they might not want it back. And they get to, for some people, they've seen kind of, they feel like they've been involved in what we've done. There's certainly some of our angel investors who have felt like they've had a real hand in what we've done and built us up, and I've referred to them as such as well. People that have invested with us since the beginning, I've told them, like point blank, you've helped us create what we've created because you believed in us at the very beginning. Whereas now we've got credibility, we've got portfolios we can show people. It should, in theory, be easy. At the beginning, it's not. And that's when you have to really have a relationship and really be able to show somebody who you are. But it's been instrumental in our business. Otherwise, I don't think our business would be what it is today. You've raised money as well, right? I know that we spoke before this about the really cool creative ways that you've been doing stuff. You've raised money as well. Have you ever had any apprehensions about it? Or did you have any kind of fixed mindset on this just can't happen because why would it?
Yeah, I was very apprehensive about it to start with. I wondered why anybody would lend me money, and it was really, really difficult. But then what happened was you get a bit of a track record, and once people can see that you're not a overnight thing and you've just come off the latest property course and you're having a go, once people see that you're hanging around, and they take a bit more interest. And then the thing that really kickstarted our finance raising was we had some end products to show people, and we could walk them round, and people would see the finish and see the pictures of what it was like to start with, and think, wow, you know. And then one couple in particular, who were friends, saw that and decided to invest in us at the beginning. And then from that, we started growing, and then more people started seeing what we were doing. But right at the beginning, I thought it would be impossible. But once you start doing it, you get more confident with it, and you get better able to manage it, and the deals start stacking better, and you can do things in different ways. But you definitely need to have some perseverance at the beginning, I think, to get people investing in you. But then, you know, people say that, you know, so when I grew up, I definitely had a fixed mindset. Everybody worked really hard for their money, and they were very protective over it. And I was brought up like that. Don't buy anything if you can't afford it, etc., etc. But then, even just, I think I put a post out 6 months ago, one of the Bank of England rate reviews, that they said there was £300 billion of cash in current accounts, not in savings accounts, just in people's current accounts earning 0.02% interest in the UK. 300 billion. So there's more money out there than people know what to do with, and it's not even in savings accounts. You know, God knows what's in savings. So yeah, there's plenty of money, but you've got to be responsible for it. You've got to have a use for it and a way to give it back, and etc., etc., a plan. So yeah.
Do you mind me asking why you think people don't invest on an angel level? Because I've thought about this before, and I'm very aware that the older people get, the more conservative they get, to a degree. I know it's a very broad statement, but people don't want to go outside their comfort zone. They don't want to learn something new. Why would they change something? And I understand that. So I understand from that demographic standpoint, they would never look to angel, and that makes sense to me. But outside of that, like you say, if you're earning 0.01% in the bank in a current account, why would you leave it there? What would make somebody change their mind to then think, actually, there's got to be something better than this? Like, there has to be something better. And then I wonder whether that's just how risk is explained to somebody. Have you ever had any thoughts on that, and how to maybe break through to that person? That's not to say that everybody wants to angel invest, and that's definitely not what I'm coming down to. But I wonder if there's any way to reach out to people like that who do have money sitting somewhere, don't really know what the other options are, and are just worried about risk, which is why I imagine they keep it in account. Have you got any thoughts on how to get through to them?
Well, I think it's I'm a big believer it's relationships.
Yeah.
So I've thought long and hard about it, actually, and there's different layers to it. So there are people with 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 grand. And then there are people with 100 to a million, and then there are people over a million. And some of them have it, even the higher amounts, it's liquid. Now, your 10, 20 to 100 grand, those people see it sitting in the bank, not doing anything. And I think those people are more open to discussing higher rates of return. Conversely, the other end of that, I was speaking to a business owner, as it happens, and this particular business has got 3 million quid sitting in the bank, not doing anything. It's cash at bank, 3 million sat there. And I said to him, you know, shall we talk about how we can make that money work better for you? You know, I can give you up to 10% on that money. And he said, well, even if you give me 10% on the 3 million quid, 300 grand's not going to change my life. Why would I bother? So, well, once you've got to that level, kind of, how do you answer that? Do you know what I mean? So,
Yeah, fair one. Cool.
yeah, okay then.
Even though, and so the counter to that is inflation is eroding their money, right? 7.9% last year over the whole of 2022. I don't know off the top of my head what it's likely to be for this year, but if you just said 7%, they were losing 7% of their 3 million. over the course of a year by doing nothing.
Yeah.
Ignore the 300,000 they might make, which I would think would be all right, but obviously not. Would they not want to just not lose that 7%? It's crazy.
Well, it's a different game that they play. So this guy, that's just one of his businesses, is a multi-squillionaire, and that particular business that I'm talking about makes 750 grand after tax net profit a year, and he just can't withdraw it. He can't do. He's got everything, and it's just money that's flooding in that makes no difference to him. So it's not like he sees that it's diminishing. He's just seeing it topping up every single year, and he can't distribute it. It's a different game, different level.
Yes.
So the trick with those people
some of it
is to get the relationship where they think, well, I'll help this guy do something for himself.
Yeah.
It's not so much the return that he's going to get from it. The trick is to have him buy in to the philosophy of helping someone grow their business, because that feels better than the 300 grand.
Which you see time and time again, right? People get to a certain stage in life or a career where they think, actually, I want to start giving back more now and helping the next person up, or I want to focus entirely on this one or two people that I believe in. So I'll mentor them, I'll fund them, whatever it might be. And you're right. It's tapping into that as opposed to, here is money. Is money really your motivator? Not really, no. So what is, and how can I help with that? That's really interesting as a thought process, that it's not just the money that is the important thing, which I guess ties back into where I said one of our very first angels feels like that they are intrinsically involved in our business because they help fund us from an early stage, and they always ask questions. They've come to site a couple of times, and that's been really nice. And I think that's more about the process than it is about the money, which very much like your man who's got 3 million just kind of sitting around under his bed, amazing, not bothered by the money, but it might be something else that he's interested in. That's a really interesting thought, that really interesting. And again, that comes down to pitching it at the right level, which we spoke about before we started recording, around finding deals, how you communicate with somebody and find what the solution is to their problem. Are they really looking for money now from a sale of a house, or are they looking for, I just don't want the headache anymore? So can you relieve that headache apart from buying it? Could you hold on to it, do the work, and then sell it or rent it from then on? Yeah. It all comes in together, doesn't it?
Yeah.
When you start looking at it as a bigger picture, it all comes in together. It's just the same thing, copy and paste with a different heading. It's amazing. Once you put the skill set, you just duplicate it.
Yeah, and it's shades of grey within everything. There's no black and white. It's where on that spectrum is that person. And just an observation is that people that have smaller amounts of money, I wouldn't call 50 grand a small amount of money, but on the scale, it is a smaller amount of money. People that have that kind of level of money are much more protective over it than the people that can't get rid of it quick enough because there's just so much of it. They're not bothered, It's and there's everything in between. So that's where your reps come in, how you speak to people, having the conversations, getting better and better at being able to communicate and see if there's ways that you can work together and all the rest of it. I think it's a skill that you learn over time, isn't it?
Completely, yeah. So what we found has been quite helpful as well, that we've had positive feedback, is providing a quarterly newsletter to all of our investors, all of our funders. Even if they don't respond, very much like social media, if they're not responding or don't seem to care, they've still got it there. They still know what you're doing. They still are aware of what interest rates are in the bank, because we put that on there quite clearly, what you could be getting from savings accounts, but also what your money is made from the time that you started with us to now. That's what it is. And we found that really helpful as a tool to communicate with people who maybe don't follow us on social media, which is absolutely fine, or just as a backup to, we're not going to go quiet once we've got the money. We will continually interact with you and let you know. And we're there, like we're open for people to ask questions if they've got questions. And I think it's that relationship, isn't it? It's knowing that the value of the money for somebody does change based on the amount, and not in the way that people think. It's exactly the way that you've described. The closer to zero that money is, the more of an important factor it is for people. And so for me, it's more about them communicating with them and letting them know, this is what we're doing, this is how active we are, this is where the market's at in general, so that they feel included, and they've got an oversight. It's their money at the end of the day. They need to know where that money is. It's the most important.
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely. So if anybody, I think we've waffled on for a good hour there, and I feel like we've only just got started. So we should definitely have another one of these in a couple of months. But if anybody wants to find you, where can they find you?
So my home address is, no, not really. My Instagram is my Instagram is Keith Firmin Property. Feel free to follow me on there. I have got a website. Honestly, off the top of my head, I wouldn't know what the website address is. That's not helpful. I would just stalk me on Instagram if I were you.
Yeah, definitely. I thoroughly recommend stalking you on Instagram. Actually, it's one of my favorites. You're one of my favorite people to follow. So
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Well, I think I've thoroughly enjoyed that, Keith. So, ladies and gentlemen, Keith Firmin, thank you very much.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.